95% of the ocean floor has never been seen by human eyes. We have mapped the surface of Mars in greater detail than the seabed beneath our own feet. And somewhere down there, under thousands of meters of cold, dark water, there may be answers to questions we haven't had the courage to ask yet. Questions about who we really are, how far back we really go, and what exactly we lost. 12,000 years ago, the world looked nothing like it does today. Sea levels were over 100 meters lower. Vast stretches of land now swallowed by the ocean were once open coastlines, river valleys, and fertile plains, home to ecosystems, animals, and quite possibly people. Then the ice melted. The glaciers retreated, the seas rose, and entire landscapes drowned. Coastlines we'll never see. Territories we'll never walk. Worlds that simply ceased to exist. And here's what no one talks about loudly enough. For most of human prehistory, that is where people lived. Coastal zones, river deltas, low-lying fertile ground near water. Which means the archaeological record we've spent 2 centuries building, the one on which we've based nearly everything we believe about early human civilization, may only be a fraction of the real story. The rest is underwater. In the Caribbean Sea, roughly 600 meters below the surface, sonar surveys have captured something that defies easy explanation. Symmetrical structures, precise geometric arrangements on the seafloor, shapes that don't follow the logic of geology, shapes that follow the logic of design. No research vessel has been sent for a closer look. The images were noted, filed, and largely forgotten. But the coordinates remain. The data remains. Off the western coast of India, in the Gulf of Combat, sonar imaging revealed an entire submerged structure. Grid patterns, walls, artifacts pulled from the depths. The Indian government announced it could predate known civilization by thousands of years. Then, for reasons never fully explained, the story quietly vanished from mainstream science. These aren't fringe theories. These are sonar returns, real images, real coordinates on real maps. What they mean? That's the question no one seems in any hurry to answer. Between Britain and mainland Europe, there was once a landmass the size of a small country. Archaeologists call it Doggerland. It was rich and temperate. Forests, rivers, wetlands alive with wildlife, inhabited for thousands of years. Fishermen in the North Sea still dredge up mammoth bones and ancient tools from its depths. We know it existed. We know people lived there. And we know it drowned. Slowly at first, then catastrophically, around 6200 BCE, when a massive underwater landslide off the Norwegian coast triggered a tsunami that finished what the rising seas had already started. Imagine being there, watching the coastline your grandparents walked simply not exist anymore. Now travel to Southeast Asia. During the last ice age, the islands of Sumatra, Java, Borneo, and the Malay Peninsula were not islands at all. They were one continuous landmass, a subcontinent called Sundaland, roughly the size of Western Europe. When the seas rose, it fragmented and sank. The people who had built their lives on its plains either moved, adapted, or were lost. The genetic record of Southeast Asian populations tells us there were mass migrations during this exact period. People moving fast and far, running from something. Their world was ending, and they carried it with them, in their genes, in their languages, and most hauntingly, in their stories. Every culture on Earth has a flood myth, every single one. The Sumerians wrote about it 4,000 years ago. The ancient Greeks told it. The Vedic texts of India describe it. Indigenous peoples across Australia, across the Americas, across the Pacific, all carry versions of the same story. A great flood, a world erased by water, a handful of survivors who remembered what came before. For a long time, academics called this coincidence, metaphor, shared psychological archetype. But what if it's simpler than that? What if it's memory? Oral traditions in indigenous cultures have been shown, in documented, peer-reviewed research, to accurately preserve real geological events across thousands of years. Aboriginal Australians carry oral histories that correctly describe the flooding of specific coastal landscapes that occurred over 7,000 years ago. The locations are accurate. The geography is accurate. They remember. So when civilization after civilization, separated by entire oceans and entire millennia, tells the same story of a world destroyed by rising water, maybe the right response isn't to file it under mythology. Maybe the right response is to go looking. In 1994, a Kurdish shepherd in southern Turkey found a carved stone buried in a hillside. What archaeologists uncovered beneath it would quietly rewrite the timeline of human civilization. Göbekli Tepe, a vast, deliberately constructed complex of carved stone pillars, some over 5 meters tall, decorated with animals and symbols that have no cultural precedent we can identify. Built approximately 12,000 years ago, before agriculture, before writing, before anything we were ever taught to call civilization. But there's one detail that rarely gets discussed. It was deliberately buried. Someone filled it in, sealed it, preserved it intentionally beneath the earth. Why would you do that? One theory, grounded in serious scholarship, is that Göbekli Tepe wasn't just a temple. It was a memorial, a monument carved in stone for a world that was disappearing. A record built by people who knew the water was coming, and who wanted whoever came after to know that something had existed before. We may be the people they built it for. Plato wrote about Atlantis around 360 BCE, a powerful civilization consumed by the ocean in a single catastrophic event. Scholars have spent centuries debating whether he invented it or inherited it. Here's what's often overlooked. Plato didn't present it as fantasy. He presented it as history. History passed down through Egyptian priests, who told a Greek statesman that the Greeks themselves were children, that there were far older civilizations whose records had been erased by catastrophes they had simply forgotten about. Strip away the dramatic details, and what remains is a story about a coastal civilization, sophisticated and connected, destroyed by the sea. We now know that description fits dozens of real places. Atlantis may not have been a single location. It may have been a memory, a collective, fragmented memory of an entire coastal world that no longer exists above the waterline. The ocean has been keeping that secret for 12,000 years. We live in an age of extraordinary capability. We have submersibles that can reach the deepest ocean trenches, sonar systems precise enough to map a shipwreck from the surface, satellite technology, robotics, and computing power that would have seemed impossible a generation ago. And yet less than a quarter of the ocean floor has been mapped at high resolution. We are not looking, not seriously, not with the urgency this question deserves. Because here is the truth we keep circling. If there were coastal civilizations during the last ice age, and everything we understand about human behavior says there were, then the vast majority of their remains are not buried in a desert or hidden in a jungle. They're underwater, sitting on submerged continental shelves in cold, dark, still water, potentially preserved in ways that land sites never could be. Untouched, unexcavated, unknown. The greatest archaeological discovery in human history may not be waiting to be dug up. It may be waiting to be dived down to. And the most unsettling part isn't that we haven't found it yet. It's that we haven't really tried. The ocean holds 12,000 years of silence. Somewhere in that silence is a chapter of the human story we've never read. A chapter about who we were before the water rose, before the maps were redrawn, before we forgot that we had ever lived there at all. It's still down there, and it's waiting. If this made you see the ocean differently, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave your thoughts below. What do you think is still waiting to be found?